Well, I'd like to bring our next guest in. Bryan Lewis is the CEO of Intellicheck. Bryan, knowing your counterparty in any industry, talk about banking and finance of who you're wiring money to is important. We talked to Brandon Freed about, what's actually going on in air freight. Knowing your shipper, you guys are providing technology to know who the counterparty is and do ID verification at Intellicheck. Tell us a little bit about what you're implementing.
Look, I will start this conversation off by saying I generally bum people out after they hear me talk, because the ability to steal your identity is, amazingly easy. And that's what people do, right? We've all been hacked. We've all got our information out there. And then what the bad guys do is use that to commit crime, whether it is going into a store and opening a credit card in your name, or pretending to be a driver and taking off with the trailer. And I think the average loss on that is, $300,000 from what I've read. And cargo theft, $35 billion annually. So, it's big numbers. It's easy to do. The cheapest thing is buying your identity. The most expensive thing, which is $40, is buying a driver's license that looks so real, most law enforcement officers can't tell it from the real thing. So identity and knowing who the person you're dealing with on any transaction is becoming more and more important. And it's all organized crime. And they always look for the soft underbelly. What's the easiest thing we can do right now to make money? And certainly from what we're seeing from the customers that are coming to us now, is a lot of it has to do with shipping and logistics.
So we've talked a lot on the show about, verifying a carrier, knowing who you're working with. But there's a difference between verifying a carrier and verifying the person physically taking possession of your load. So can you talk us through that distinction?
Yeah, because it's sort of the same thing, right? So verifying the carrier is one thing, because, right, you know who they are and they've got some credibility to them. But the same bad guys can fake the carrier out and then fake you out. So it's sort of knowing who you are dealing with at the time that you transfer, the product, whatever that product is a very important thing. And it has a whole bunch of supply chain issues to it, right? We work with some automotive companies that are very worried about their suppliers, because, if they miss a shipment or two, they're kind of, their chain could shut down, right? The place where they're building their cars, and that costs them, thousands of dollars a minute. So knowing, first step, make sure you're dealing with a reputable company. But the second step is always making sure you know who you are dealing with at the point of transfer of product.
What is it? I'm curious, there's been an evolution of, talking to Brandon earlier, just how things have changed at September 11 over the last 20 years. But we cover all this freight fraud. We had two stories this morning where there are multiple millions of dollars that were committed in various different elaborate sets of crimes. Where is this all headed? What are some of the emerging threats that you're seeing?
So I think the emerging threats that we're seeing is partially AI is making it much easier to create documents that look very, very real, right? And, I'll be very honest about it. Most of these documents come from China, which is where we buy most of the plastic to make the licenses. So they are very, very accurate. And I think most people are still relying on a visual inspection. The person comes in, here's my license, I'll look at it, it looks real, here you go, and then the trailer's gone. Technology can change that. And I think that, there's a couple of things. One, we need to make sure the technology is fast and accurate. And that is where I think the world needs to go. How do you figure out how to move beyond just a person looking at whatever document is coming in and saying, it looks good, to using technology to say, no, it is good. And, most of these technologies, like ours, super accurate. And, you lose one load, you probably paid for the product for a year. So it's kind of the way I look at it is like cheap insurance to make sure that you're protecting your business.
Yeah. So talk a little bit more about that, and how do you add stronger identity checks at pickup without slowing down the process? You talked about, using technology, it being a quick process. Can you talk in detail a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So, like, for example, what we do, and the freight companies that are using us do it on a mobile app. And it's real simple, and it takes less than 44 milliseconds to scan a license and determine if it's real or not. So many industries that we are in care about speed, right? I will bet that just about 80% of the people on this call have gone through our process and never ever knew it because it's that fast. The last thing, say, a retailer wants when they say, do you want to save 10% today and get a new credit card, is to have the line back up. So speed is really, really important. And that's exactly why the freight companies that are using us love us. Take the driver's license, scan it, bang, you've got an answer. Is it real or not? And, that gives them the surety to know I can let this load go.
Bryan, is it something to do with the algorithm on the back end? Again, I know that you've got to somewhat keep the formula somewhat secret because it's an evolution. But does it have to do with the way you guys are scanning the database to look at to verify that the photo that's on the ID is actually state issued? Is that how it works, or what can you tell us?
So look, I have stacks and stacks and stacks of fake IDs that our law enforcement agencies and our customers give us. I think one of the common misperceptions is that if a license scans, it's real, but it does not mean that at all. And what I will also say is no state, territory, province, Canada, US, has the same format. Every one of them is different. And they all have different security features in them. Some of them have digital keys that you need to understand how to unlock. Some have checksum weird digit programs going into it. And that's what we check. And from the Intellicheck side, that's because we've been working with the DMVs since the 90s to help them when they bring out new barcodes. So we understand what they're doing inside that barcode. Now, the reason every barcode will scan is because AAMVA, which is the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators, which everybody in Canada and the US belongs to, publishes a standard format. And again, nobody uses that format except for the bad guys. So that way they know it's going to scan. So every single one of these fakes that I have will scan, but it doesn't mean they're real.
It's evolved. If I'm confessing, I tried to make my own fake ID with a scanner and a printer in college. But that was how it used to be. You couldn't get sophisticated ID. It always felt like one of these movies you'd watch, person's trying to escape, and it would be very elaborate. They'd have to know somebody. $100,000 to get a fake ID. What you're describing is it's super simple, right off the internet. $50 to become someone's new identity.
Both on the bright web and the dark web. And the other scary bit about it is, if you look at, say, the United Healthcare hack, which happened last year, not only was the PII, the personally identifiable information on a lot of people hacked, they had photos of the IDs. And if you go to these websites, it allows you to plug in the driver's license number, the document discriminator, and every other piece of information, right? So, even if they checked against the DMV record, it would look to be real because all the information would match. But what they can't do is create that barcode that has the secret sauce of that particular state or province. because that is basically unhackable. So, it is scary how much about us all is out there, and then what people can do with it. And it's, again, I'm going to say it's not just, going and stealing a trailer, it's stealing your identity and ripping you off everywhere.
Bryan, one of the stories I've heard as we've been covering this whole freight fraud thing and non-domiciled CDLs and trucking is that, in certain, I think Somalia, we had an executive at a very large broker that told me a story that he was in an Uber and he was it was a Somali driver, and the Somali driver confessed to him that there's one CDL for this whole group of people. And the comment was made that the law enforcement can't tell us the difference. I mean, it seemed like something you can't say in public, but the guy was offering it up that they're sharing identity because law enforcement can't tell the difference when you get into these very specific groups of people. How do we fend this off? If you have someone who's borrowed an ID or are transferring the ID, how are you possibly able to do it without outside of a fingerprinting? Like when law enforcement pulls them over, how do they know this guy is legit?
Yeah, I think you're talking about like I think they call it license rental, right? Where I will, my Uber license or my DoorDash or my,
or even CDL. This was an example of a CDL. Basically, these communities, they're transferring licenses.
So if you're transferring, that's when somebody really has to look at, does this person look like this person? Like we have certainly seen that in some of the crime rings where they will go after a specific demographic that, maybe people aren't looking closely enough at, do you match this picture? And I think that's where the intelligence is. Now, if somebody is handing over a real license that is not them, nobody can detect that, right? That just requires somebody saying, you don't look like this person, and then going on to the next step. But, I think the first step is, let's see if this is real. Second
with
step,
GLP-1s,
you look like the person.
Harder and harder because people look different. You've seen I've lost 50 pounds on a GLP-1. Because I don't have hair. I look largely the same.
Yeah, but if you had hair and were 60 pounds heavier, you wouldn't look like your ID at all. Yeah.
Like if I did a hair transplant.
Yeah.
Hey, I did do a bet that if spot rates didn't hit because I knew they were going to hit a record, that I would go to Turkey. My wife was against that, by the way. She hated that I offered that up. All of a sudden come back with a full head of hair.
I don't want to cover the show for that long while you heal.
That's true. Probably would not be a great look. Brian, I gotta ask.
What I will say, one quick thing though, is since so many of these people are hired remotely, now it doesn't matter if you lost 50 pounds or you lost your hair, right? Facial recognition, biometrics will measure the vectors on your face, and we can tell if it's you or not. And since a lot of times people are sort of hired remotely, we can handle that because we can remotely validate the license and then also validate from that license picture that you're the guy holding it and that you match the picture.
So, Brian, we have a wide variety of folks that tune into the show. Many of them are not truck drivers. They're worried about their identity as a just a normal person. What advice would you have for your family members in terms of how they can protect themselves best? Is there a couple of things that are just easy to do that can help keep people safe?
Yeah, I'd say lock down your credit, because now it's easy to turn it on and off. Now, that's not going to stop. One of the main ways that people will steal your identity is they know where you have accounts, and they'll walk into the store and say, oh, I forgot my credit card, but I want to buy this. Now, it won't stop that, but it will stop things like the amount of cars bought under stolen identities is amazing. The amount of houses sold under identity theft is amazing. But if you lock your credit down, then you can protect that. Now, the other thing, too, is get a free credit monitoring service. Just watch what's going on. Because, 15 million Americans, $30+ billion a year purely on identity theft last year. That's the consumer side of it. That's not the business side of it. So the main thing you can do, lock down what you have and monitor what is happening to your name and your credit. And most importantly, do it for your children, because they attack kids and old people more. Kids are easy because nobody thinks about them. And you wouldn't realize it until, 3 months from now, you got a huge credit card bill for your, 16-year-old.
That's crazy.
That's
I mean,
a
it's
good call.
scary. And I think about AI.
I worry about my parents more than anything, honestly.
You worry about your parents?
Yeah, getting, like somehow.
Older people. Well, that seems to be one of the most vulnerable populations are older people who are not as in tune with some of the technology, or you talk to the people where their parents watched the first AI video and don't realize it's AI. That's, we all have people in our family that we know that just are like, this isn't real, and you're like, come on.
Well, and it's getting more and more sophisticated. Like my daughter, knows not to reply to a text if it's not from somebody she doesn't know.
I think everyone needs a code word that only you and your wife knows, so that
100%. But my family has one of those words, and they're getting so sophisticated. The amount of things that come in supposedly from me to employees in my company, and we train on that all the time. But it is so realistic.
Yeah, I'm sending you messages.
I get 10 a day asking, no, not to wire money, asking to confirm my cell phone number.
Oh, well, there was one, we had an incident, this is years ago.
But they're very polite. They're very.
Freightways, I know, and if it's super polite, because I'm so direct. But we had a situation years ago on Freightways TV. We had a young producer. She had just started. She was moving from Florida. She reported me to HR for harassing her for not going to Walgreens and buying gift cards. And HR reaches out to me and said, hey, we got this formal complaint about you harassing her on her home time on vacation because she refused to go to Walgreens on her time off. And I'm like, that wasn't me. But it sounded so like me that she didn't know the difference.
Yeah, and the things and just tell your whole families, right? The things to look out for are sense of urgency, right? They try and make you feel like it has to be done now. This is so important, right? Nothing has to be done now, but that's what they're going to do. One of the biggest things the bad guys do is make you feel like if you don't do it now, something bad's really going to happen. Right, so they prey on human instinct, right? And that's why I think these folks are really kind of animals. They are not, they want your money, and they're going to do anything they can do to get it. Things that come into you are going to look very, very realistic. It's going to have a sense of urgency, and they're going to want it fast. And and people fall prey to that.
And AI is making it so easy to sound like someone or looks like someone. And you got to have, I think the only defense there, I've read stories, I think the Journal had a story not too long ago about a father who thought his daughter was kidnapped and he was on the way to the bank to do a big withdrawal. And it just so happened that he was told not to contact anybody. They're monitoring his cell phone. And I think his wife called and she's like, no, I just got off the phone with the daughter. And it turned out to be a complete scam. He was completely unaware. He was in panic. That's the scary part. The only way you're going to know is just have a secret word. My wife and I had a secret word, and I was telling my wife we were doing this. She tells her best friend, I'm like, there's a reason it's a secret.
Not a secret anymore.
So I hope
Don't
that
say
my
it in
wife
front of your
remembers it because
kids
she
either,
might struggle.
They'll,
But that's, social
and the scariest thing too, when you talk about AI, it's making it so it's much faster and easier. So the volume of this stuff, like it used to be, everybody knows about, the Nigerian call centers, where they're calling up and pretending to be something. But, that meant one person making one phone call. With AI, and the amount of information we've put out on social media about ourselves, people can copy you. AI can do it. And it allows them, instead of doing 60 calls in an hour, they can do 6,000. So that's what is really, I think, ramping up a lot of this fraud.
Bryan, you do give me anxiety, unfortunately. All of this gives me anxiety. I appreciate you coming on. It's very similar to what Brandon Freed with the Air Forwarders Association. After September 11, there was always a view that, the statement is the terrorists only have to be right once. They have to be right 100% of the time. The same thing as an identity theft. It only takes one vulnerability, one incident. In a business, it takes one person at a controller or somebody in accounting doing something. That's where a lot of this is coming. It's all social engineering. Some of the biggest hacks have been done because someone was trying to your point, trying to cooperate or thought they were doing the right thing, and they made a mistake. One inversion, and all of a sudden it ends up exposing everybody. Just absolutely scary and quite frightening.
Correct. Yeah. So be vigilant is all I can say.
Be vigilant.
Well, Bryan, we'd love to have you back to keep us up to date. Congratulations
Anytime.
on your success.
My pleasure.